Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is like the fifth time I've tried to record this. It's one of those days. You can tell I'm not using my regular camera right now. I'm using my laptop. It's not quite as good, but anyway, I apologize for the lower quality than usual. Point being, we're going to talk about Medjugorje and the Charismatic Renewal today, the link that's between them. And we're going to go over a lot of information. At a certain point, I'm going to be going behind my Substack as well. So if you'd like to hear the whole story, you can go there. The link for that is in the description area for this podcast. Easy to sign up. Thank you for all those who have supported me. And before I get into the podcast, I just want to mention that I am going to Italy this fall, a traditional Catholic pilgrimage. We will not be going to Medjugorje, even though it's just around the corner. We will be at sound, traditional, faithful, approved Orthodox Catholic sites for pilgrimage. And you can see a quick promo for that here. All the trouble in Rome, it is easy to forget about one unshakable fact. Our church is the Roman Catholic Church, and Rome is the eternal city. What a perfect time to go on a pilgrimage to the eternal city and the other monumental sites of Catholic heritage in beautiful Italy. Join Father Albert Calliu and me this November as we tour through the shrines of Italy and the Amalfi Coast as we attend daily Mass in the Old Rite in the footsteps of St. Peter and St. Francis. Click the link in the description to register for this once-in-a-lifetime pilgrimage to discover the heart of the Catholic faith in the heart of the old Roman Empire. Visit kennedyhall.ca or click the link underneath. It's pretty simple. You can sign up. It's a great trip, once-in-a-lifetime experience with a wonderful priestly guide and guides through Italy as well. And I'm an Italian speaker, so it'll be nice to be there for myself as well. Okay, so what is it with Medjugorje and the Charismatic Renewal? Let's look at a couple parallels. First, the Charismatic Renewal did not start as a Catholic movement. It started outside the church. It started in Pentecostalism, which I've talked about many times. We're not going to go over that here. If you want to know the history of the renewal, you can check out my video called Charismania, as well as the ones that have followed in the last couple of weeks. Also, I will be writing a book on the Charismatic Renewal. I'm just handing in my book that I'm writing right now, the one that I'm working on. And then once I'm finished, doing what I have to do for that, I'm going to move on to my next one. So I'll probably write the Charismatic book sometime this summer. So stay tuned for that. And so in any event, the Charismatic Renewal did not begin as an actual Catholic movement. It began in Protestantism, and then it was never started in the way you're supposed to start Catholic things. So if you look into how the various spiritualities in the church started, well, first of all, they're nothing like Pentecostalism, so just put that aside for a sec, but in the realm of normal things or acceptable things, they started through the proper channels. So-and-so may be kind of visionary, like a Francis of Assisi or a St. Ignatius of Loyola, but they go through the proper channels and it's vetted and tested. In fact, I believe St. Ignatius of Loyola, who started the Jesuits, was under suspicion by the Inquisition. They weren't sure about his thing and they really had to test it and prove it. And you go through the proper channels, you get bishop approval and papal approval and those sorts of things, and it's an official thing. None of that ever happened with the Charismatic Renewal. It was a group of lay people who said, to heck with it, I want to go find some strange fire with the Protestants. They write about this in their books, which you can find, and I've talked about that. They go have this experience with Protestants. They come back and they say, we're going to do our own thing because God wants us to do this. And it's completely anti-Catholic in the way that it happened. Very similar to the Charismatic Renewal is the beginnings of Medjugorje. We're going to talk about some of the ins and outs of Medjugorje in a few seconds here. But just for Cole's notes, there are alleged visions. So in fairness to them, the people around the visions went to the local bishop, which they're supposed to do, about things like this. And he said no. And they investigated and they said no. And the successor said no. And that's what it's remained. Some of the charismatic supporters of Medjugorje will say that it was approved, or the first 7 days were approved by the Vatican. You can always just say the Vatican and it covers all your bases, but that doesn't really mean much considering there's all these congregations and whatever. But approved of these under a commission that was established by Pope Benedict XVI. The problem with that is that's not really what happened. There was a commission established to look into it, and the opinion of this commission, which had no juridical ruling on the diocese itself, believed that some of the early ones may have been supernatural. That's not an approval of the apparition by any means. It's not how the church works. In fact, before Pope Francis's recent document on apparitions, which is good and bad depending on how you look at it, it was very much in the hands of the local bishop, and that's the way it worked. And there's a very specific process for that. So none of that has been approved. Nothing to do with Medjugorje has been approved by the local bishop. That's just a fact. So, I often hear from charismatics who love Medjugorje that, the SSPX is bad, for example, because, they're not regular, communion or regular canonical status or things like that. Okay, fine. I won't do the apologetic for that. I've done that 1,000 times. You can check out my book on the subject. But that's like calling the kettle black a little bit, isn't it? I mean, Protestant heretical spirituality not started in the Catholic Church with no approval by the church, and then visiting apparition sites that the bishop has said you're not supposed to visit. I mean, we should stop throwing stones in glass houses here, my friends. But I just want to give you a quick update on the history of Medjugorje, really Cole's notes from Catholic Answers. I know that sometimes I make fun of Catholic Answers because they deserve it sometimes. Nonetheless, here is a pretty good little summary. So the question was, what is the church's official stance on the reported Marian apparitions in Medjugorje? Answer, and this is the basic background. In June 1981, the Blessed Mother reportedly began appearing regularly to several children in the town of Medjugorje, which is located in the Diocese of Mostar Duvno, then part of Yugoslavia. The diocese is now part of the nation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. In 1985, Mostar Duvno's bishop, Pavao Zanic, determined that the apparitions were not authentic, and they have the link for that here, i.e. not of supernatural origin. In 1991, the Bishops' Conference of Yugoslavia ruled that the supernatural character of the reported apparitions could not be confirmed or affirmed. This is different than a definitive declaration that there is no supernatural character, but it's still not an approval. Bishop Zanic maintained his position until his retirement in 1993. He's still in charge, by the way. And it's important here, the Bishops' Conference of Yugoslavia. The Bishops' Conference of Yugoslavia is not the diocesan bishop. The diocesan bishop maintained his position. Bishop Ratko Pedic succeeded him. Throughout his tenure, which lasted until just a few years ago, Bishop Pedic consistently reaffirmed the decision of his predecessors. So up till 2020, there is no approval of Medjugorje in the proper way. Bishop Petar Palic is the current bishop of Mostar Duvno, and he has not overturned his predecessor's decisions. The Holy See, consistent with the rulings of the local bishops, has allowed pilgrimages to Medjugorje, provided they don't, this is amazing here, they do not present the reported apparitions as approved by the church. So even under Pope Francis, it is not approved by the church. The Holy See has also forbidden the faithful from participating in events where the reported seers present their reported apparitions as of supernatural origin. And Catholic Answers says something I think wise to say here. Those who have had experiences of conversions or deepening of faith associated with pilgrimages to Medjugorje should know that the validity of their experiences does not hinge upon whether the reported apparitions are declared of supernatural origin. Indeed, the sacraments are valid at Medjugorje, and the Blessed Mother can and does fruitfully intercede for those who seek her sincerely, wherever that may be. And I think that's a good background. So thank you to Catholic Answers. I know I make fun of you sometimes, which I said you deserve sometimes, but nonetheless, I think that was a good one. So here's the thing, my friends. It's not approved. It's never been approved. Pope Francis has allowed pilgrimages. This is consistent with Catholic tradition. There have been many pious devotions historically, before we even get into the history of Medjugorje and the problems. There have been many pious devotions historically where there's really no approval or anything like that, but it's sort of a place of piety. And it might be, Our Lady of this, or Our Lady of this mountain, or Our Lady of this town, or something like that. And it's never really approved, but the bishop will say, okay, you can have masses here under that name because it's an Orthodox Catholic title. And, nothing can be disseminated as if she came here for real, but this is a place of a lot of Marian piety. Bishop Schneider has talked about this as far as Medjugorje is concerned, where something similar is permissible. I think Medjugorje is a different case a little bit because we're going to get into the nonsense from the messages. Nonetheless, it is, there's a logic there to having pilgrimages or having, things like that. But the Vatican has been very clear that you will not present it as approved, and no one will be present at the quote-unquote seeing events. If you know anything about Medjugorje and people who attend Medjugorje and they get invited to conferences and things, the Vatican, the Church, Rome, is completely ignored by the charismatic proponents of Medjugorje, which isn't that ironic. Okay, so let's go here too to just see just how confused the charismatics are about Medjugorje. This is an article from some charismatic, Mark Mallet, I guess is his name. And this is what he says here. And it just shows that they just doesn't know what he's talking about. And these charismatics, I don't think they're of ill will. I honestly, one thing I've realized studying the renewal, they just don't know what they're talking about. There's just a huge lack of catechesis. I think it's all because it's experience and it's praise and worship and it's speaking in tongues and it's reading all these spiritual life books and things. But there's just a real dearth and actual formation on what the church actually teaches and what is actually binding on Catholics. So he said, and this is his authority because I'm Mark Mallet. This is my authority. As I wrote on Medjugorje, objectively, we have in this single apparition site one of the greatest sources of conversion in the church since Pentecost. That's not true at all. Hundreds of documented miracles. Documented does not mean approved. Muslims document miracles. Hindus document miracles. Pentecostal heretics document miracles, but whatever. Thousands of priestly vocations. Many of those have been in charismatic priesthood, which is not good. And countless ministries throughout the world that are a direct result of Our Lady appearing there. You see all the errors there? Where has the church said that it is of supernatural character? We've been through this. Nowhere has it been approved as being supernatural. But according to this charismatic guru, Mark Mallet, it's a direct result of Our Lady. No, it's not. And you can't say that because it's not approved by the church and you're not God. So you don't get to say what Our Lady does without approval from the Bride of Christ. Recently, it was made public that a Vatican commission appears to have accepted. Amazing. The cheating with words here. Amazing. Appears to have accepted. No. A Vatican commission voted on whether or not they were of the opinion that the first few messages could be of supernatural origin. The Vatican Commission has no authority over the local diocese. The Vatican Commission did not approve it for the Universal Church. It is the same as any other thing in the Vatican where they get together and they have a powwow and a conference and they say, this is what we think. It does not mean anything for the life of Catholics. Appears to have accepted the apparitions, at least in the early stages. And yet many continue to dismiss this obvious gift and grace as the work of the devil. If Jesus said, you shall know a tree by its fruit, I can't think of a more rational statement. This is amazing, isn't it? This fellow here can't think of a more rational statement than saying, follow what the church teaches on something. Because charismatics don't have to follow what the church teaches on things, do they? Because the Holy Ghost tells them what to do. You see the problems here? You see the absolute ridiculous problems here? I'm sorry sometimes I get a little bit, worked up about this, but this is the thing is what's so crazy about this. What is so crazy about this is that these speakers and this Mark Mallet guy and stuff, these people can gallivant around your parish, your diocese, whatever, giving conferences and retreats, and they don't even know what the church teaches on the subject, or they're ignoring it. But try to go to your parish, your local diocesan parish, and give a conference on why the Latin Mass is better than Novus Ordo. You see the problem of modernism in the church? Anyway. Okay, so we're not going to read the rest of this article here. So I want to go into the origins of the charismatic renewal, the origins of what actually happened. So we're going to go a little bit more detail here. And I said, this is not a huge deep dive. We're not going to go real deep into, all the different things about the seers. Maybe on another show I'll do that, but I just want to go into sort of the important things about what the hierarchy actually did. So, okay. In the early 1980s, there is the alleged apparitions. So here it is. This is one statement here that's important. It is the duty of the local bishop of the diocese in which supposed supernatural events take place to study and confirm or deny the legitimacy of the claims being made. The bishop in the diocese to which Medjugorje belongs, which we've been over that, he formed a diocesan commission to do an impartial inquiry into the events that had been taking place since 1981. After a few years of thorough and intense investigative study, which the Church always exercises to determine an unmistakable decision in these matters, the bishop issued a statement in 1986 giving the results of the study. In the statement, Monsignor Zanic condemned the apparitions as not made by the Most Holy Virgin Mary, and he forbade the pilgrimages set up from the beginning without ecclesiastical approval of the pastor of Mostar. So again, the Charismatic Renewal, born in rebellion against Catholic teaching. I've said this before, but under the old Code of Canon Law, not because it was in the code, but because it's moral theology, but under the old Code of Canon Law, if you participated in the sacred rites of non-Catholics, it was a mortal sin. How did the Charismatic Renewal start? They went and they found some Pentecostals and they participated in their sacred rites against the teaching and the law of the Church. How does Medjugorje start? There is alleged apparitions, and we're not even going to go into the background of the seers here because that's just too much information for this episode. None of the steps were followed. It was, we see some visions, let's do some pilgrimages. And they do it even though the local bishop never approved it, and even though he condemned it. And they continued doing it, as we'll keep seeing here. So, in the Second Diocesan Commission, which worked from 1984 to 1986, voted explicitly on May 1986 by an overwhelming majority of for the non constate de supernaturalitate, which means not supernatural. 11 negative votes, 2 positive, 1 in nucleo, 1 in abstention. The Declaration of the Episcopal Conference of 1991 stated, on the basis of studies concluded so far, it cannot be affirmed that supernatural apparitions and revelations are occurring. My conviction and my position is not only non constate de supernaturalitate, but also constate de non supernalitate, as regards the apparitions or revelations of Medjugorje. This is from the bishop of the time. And just so everyone thinks this was not some, bishop who hated apparitions, he was asked by Father Deleclos of the Libre Belgique what he thought, and he said, are you, as a matter of principle, against apparitions? And the bishop replied, quite the contrary. I myself have been 8 times to Lourdes, and I have organized pilgrimages. I have done much for the devotion of the Most Holy Virgin. I was even in Banu and Boran, Belgium, and Syracuse in Italy, 3 places where the apparitions of Mary had been stated as authentic. And I would agree with him. Guadalupe is a huge part of my life. Our Lady of Fatima is a huge part of my life. I love Marian apparitions that are approved, and we pray the rosary. We got a big statue of Mary, of Our Lady of Fatima, in our living room. Maybe you can hear my kids in the background. So I'm not against these things. It's just that Medjugorje is not approved by the church. And he went on to say, however, you are not convinced of this in Medjugorje. Reply, I should really be glad to have a Lourdes in my diocese. It would be something grandiose. But I cannot before God, before my conscience, and before the church proclaim these apparitions are authentic and supernatural. I am certainly a sinner and unworthy to be a bishop. Yet I believe it would be the worst of all the sins of my life to let this falseness pass for truth, knowing that it is a lie. Wow. Despite these words of the bishop, which the faithful should accept as a decision from God, as per how these things have been understood in the past, people continued to flock to Medjugorje, and the priest did not desist from organizing pilgrimages as ordered. So let's just go here. I'm going to talk here about how this is a little bit too big here, sorry. There we go. How the Medjugorje apparitions compare to Catholic tradition, because there's lots of things that have been said. So I'm going to go something here about some of the things that have been said about the charismatic, Freudian slip, same thing, that have been said about Medjugorje as compared to Catholic tradition. Then I'm going to go behind a paywall, and we're going to go into some of the most egregious heresies that have been said at Medjugorje, and they're absolutely insane. They are so un-Catholic. Anyone who just studied their St. Joseph's Catechism for First Communion should know these things are wrong and insane, but they still persist. But before we do that, let's have a little bit of a summary here. Medjugorje has been condemned by the competent authority that is in charge of it since day one. And we haven't even got into the life of the seers. I'll do another show on that at some point. That's a whole other topic. We're talking about diabolism and Gnosticism and immorality and financial fraud. I mean, it's insane. But it just hasn't been approved. And Our Lady would never ask us to be disobedient to the competent authority for no reason. Meaning, this is not a matter of the faith. This is not a matter of the faith. Medjugorje is not a matter of the Catholic faith. You do not need to believe in Medjugorje to be saved. You need to believe the Catholic faith and be baptized and live in a state of grace and die that way to be saved. Medjugorje does not fall under that. Even Our Lady of Fatima. Our Lady of Fatima, look at the persecution the children went to, and they persisted, and they followed the competent authorities, and things were properly done in the proper way, and eventually the thing was approved, and then, it's for the universal church. They could have easily have said, well, we had a miracle of the sun, who needs approval? And that was a real miracle, but they didn't. They continued with it. Medjugorje is not like that at all. It's born in disobedience and rebellion, and as we'll see in another video, lies and deceit. And even today, under Pope Francis, as liberal as he is, You can attend a pilgrimage there because people do that sort of thing to lots of places that aren't approved historically, and I've talked about that already in this video. But you can't attend one of the quote-unquote vision meetings, moments, and you can't present it as approved. Do any proponents of Medjugorje listen to that? I mean, we saw from this Mark Mallet guy, who's one of the leading gurus of it, they just talk about it as, why don't Catholics just get with the program? Medjugorje is the greatest thing since Pentecost. Insane, insane, insane. Okay, and just against the Catholic spirit, but the Pentecostal Charismatic Renewal is against the Catholic spirit because it's born in heretical Protestant group, and it was not approved by the church, and so we would expect nothing less. Okay, so this is some of the church's teachings from tradition versus some of the things that have come out of Medjugorje. We're going to do a deep dive on more of those after. If you want to see the rest of it, check my Substack. The link for that is in the description area to this podcast. So what the church says, there is but one universal church of the faithful outside of which no one at all can be saved. That's Pope Innocent III. What Medjugorje says, God presides over all religions as a king controls his subjects through his priests and ministers. So God is directly willing the priests and ministers of false religions. That's heresy. We declare, say, define, and pronounce that it is absolutely necessary for the salvation of every human creature to be subject to the Roman pontiff. That is from Pope Boniface III. Kind of a big deal. Defined, declared, and pronounced. Medjugorje. This was to one of the seers, quote unquote, in 1984. The Madonna always stresses that there is but one God and that people have enforced an unnatural separation. One cannot truly be a true Christian, if he does not respect other religions as well. That's not true at all. I don't respect heresy, neither should you. The Most Holy Roman Catholic Church firmly believes, professes, and preaches that none of those existing outside of the Catholic Church can have eternal life. Kind of a big deal. Ex cathedra. The Madonna said, this is Medjugorje from one of the seers, that religions are separated in the earth, but the people of all religions are accepted by her Son. That is flat out heresy. The gospel, that they may be one, as thou, Father, art in me, and I in thee, that they also may be one in us, that as a consequence the world may believe that thou hast sent me. That's from the Gospel of John. One of the seers. Question, is the Blessed Mother calling all people to be Catholic? Answer, no. The Blessed Mother says all religions are dear to her and her Son. Absolute blasphemy. Ephesians, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace, there is one body and one Spirit, even as ye are called in one hope of your calling, one Lord, one faith, one baptism. That's from Ephesians. This is from Medjugorje. The Blessed Mother has said, tell everyone that it is you who are divided on earth. The Muslims and the Orthodox, for the same reason as Catholics, are equal before my Son and me. Absolutely false. And ladies and gentlemen, this is just a snippet. There is so much more here about this Medjugorje problem that we're going to go into. And I'm going to do that behind a paywall. So if you want to see more of what it is, we're going to go deep dive on some of the heresies. Before I go behind the paywall here, just click the link in the description if you'd like to join. Lots of great stuff there. That's for subscribers. And if you do sign up for my Substack, you'll actually get a sneak peek at my book as I'm writing it, because I'm going to share that with my subscribers. My book, my forthcoming book on the Charismatic Renewal that I'm going to write this summer. No one should have anything to do with Medjugorje. I mean, like, I live in Canada. You can get on a plane in a 3.5-hour, 4-hour plane flight away. You can arrive in Mexico City. It's very cheap to go to Mexico. And you can go to Our Lady of Guadalupe. And this guy talks about how Medjugorje, Mark Mallet, how Medjugorje is the site of like the greatest conversion since Pentecost or whatever. What about Guadalupe? I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. I mean, we're talking like 10 million people literally came into the church. Okay? That's what a conversion is. A bunch of people go to Medjugorje and they have experiences. Well, you should read Pascendi by Pius X on modernism. Religious experience is not truth of religion. This is just not the case. It's called vital immanence. It's a condemned heresy, this idea that you have this interior revelation and experience, and this is truth of your religion. That's not how it works. Medjugorje is just not of the church. It's just not approved by the church. It's never been approved by the church. Even under Pope Francis, it's not approved of all things. The charismatic gurus like Mark Mallet are telling people to go there, and they think it's absurd and insane that somebody would disagree with their Medjugorje position. It's like, why? Your position means nothing. It's not based in the church's teaching. I mean, we read over that, but it's like verbal jujitsu. It's like totally confusing, and it's not based in anything. So have nothing to do with it. I mean, the church has real apparitions that are approved and that don't contain heresy. And this is one of the things that, people will say, oh, the fruits of Medjugorje. It's like, well, I'm sorry, but the fruits of Medjugorje are sour. Yes, people have experiences, but what faith are they believing? What faith are you believing if you believe the messages of Medjugorje? It's heresy. And we're going to go into more right now. So if you want to know more of the heresies of Medjugorje, you can click the link underneath here. Sorry, the door keeps slamming. My kids are coming in and out of different parts of the house, and it makes the door go. But click the link underneath, and I'll see you on the other side. Click the Substack or YouTube membership, and I'll have the full video for you there. Okay, talk soon, and let's continue those who have signed up for my Substack.